I mean, there are many values that they imparted in us, but two things that really come to mind. Their focus was first on education and continuous learning as a long-term asset and an advancement tool.
Mm-hmm.
And the second was thrift, in the
Mm.
sense that spend only on what is necessary, invest but do not waste. I mean, though that. But for me personally, it was a time of restlessness and eagerness.
Mm-hmm.
I frankly, I have always loved America for its energy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I wanted to achieve the American dream. I
Mm-hmm.
was full of ideas, looking for opportunities to excel, and really pushing forward full throttle. And on the note of entrepreneurship, I mean, frankly, Silicon Valley is a wonderful place to be to get inspired. I mean, you have so many great examples.
Right.
And I also wanted to do what nobody in my family had ever done before, to start my own company. In November 95, I had about $20,000 in my bank. And I said, enough thinking, let's just make it happen.
Yeah.
So I quit Sun and started I2P.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first company building USB, PCI, and some of these building blocks for computer chips. And interestingly, our first project was actually NVIDIA. At that time, it was just a newly started startup. So very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Really, building a company from scratch is like planting a seed that grows into a tree that bears fruit. So
Mm-hmm.
people who like gardening, they will understand that it's a very satisfying experience. A lot of people's lives get shaped by working in your companies. They advance their careers. It is a very, very satisfying feeling. What happened is, when my kids grew up and went to college, my first one went to college,
Mm-hmm.
Anu and I said, why don't we do a trek? Somebody proposed the idea of Everest Base Camp back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And then that bug kind of infected us. We did Valley of Flowers, we did Annapurna Circuit. So anything below 17,000, 16,000 was not fun enough.
Mm-hmm.
We did Chadar, which is, we were in minus 35 Celsius.
Wow.
We did a 20,000er Stoke Kangri in the Himalayas. Outside India, we did the John Muir Trail, which is about 230 miles.
Mm-hmm.
We did Kilimanjaro, which is a 19,000er, and we recently did a 100-mile Tour du Mont Blanc in France.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did.
What are the top three values and strengths that have guided you throughout life and sustained you, irrespective of whether it was your career or going for a trek or just kind of going through life? What do you think are the three values and strengths? Hi, viewers. My name is Upesh Jain. Greetings from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the host of the Exec Talk channel, a forum I started to talk to CEOs, executives, and other luminaries about their journeys and distill their experiences and learnings for our viewers' benefit. Today, we have the honor of talking to Samir Palnitkar, a serial entrepreneur who has founded 5 startups: Zenrello, Moho Networks, Ingot Systems, Obongo Inc., I2P, all with successful exits. In his career, he has played several roles: the roles of a founder, COO, GM, president, and investor. He held responsibilities in engineering and technology, product delivery, technical support, operations, marketing, sales, and management. Early in his career, Samir held key management and engineering positions at Sun Microsystems. He is the holder of 4 US patents, has authored 2 authoritative books on chip design, and published several technical papers. Samir holds a BTech in electrical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, IIT Kanpur, and an MS in electrical engineering from the University of Washington, Seattle, and an MBA from San Jose State University. I have personally known Samir for 33 years. We first met at Sun Microsystems and shared an office and hit it off and have managed to stay in touch over the years. Samir was always a sharp action-oriented person, and it's no surprise to see his accomplishments and trajectory over the years. Besides his professional life, Samir likes to push the boundaries, being an avid traveler, trekker, and biker. He has explored the world in all continents and done adventure stints like Everest Base Camp, Kilimanjaro, John Muir Trail, amongst other numerous other travel accomplishments, too many to mention here. He captures his travels in meticulous blogs with day-by-day accounts and photos, which are very inspirational. Samir, I'd like to welcome you to my channel and recap your journey. I'm sure my
Thanks.
viewers will be inspired by your story and what you stand for.
Sure. It's a pleasure, Upesh.
Thanks for making time for me. Samir, let's get into the Q&A. And Samir, tell me about your early life. Where were you born and raised, and what was your home environment like and your role models? How did that influence you?
Sure. So I grew up in a very middle-class family. My parents actually grew up in very small villages in Maharashtra. And in search of work, my father migrated to Gujarat. So I was born and brought up in Baroda, Gujarat. And frankly, my father was not even a college graduate when he started working because he had to make a living. But he had a deep desire for education, and he continued to study after marriage and kids, his graduation, his professional degree. And I'm very proud that he actually finally retired as the general manager legal at Gujarat State Fertilizers in Baroda, Gujarat. So huge accomplishment considering where he started. And frankly, as my father climbed the professional ladder through sheer grit and hard work, my mother managed our finances very meticulously. We were never short, but we didn't have plenty of money. I mean, my stay-at-home mom used to sometimes walk a few kilometers so that she could save a few rupees on the vegetables. I mean, that's the kind of thrift we were used to. My father had to take a small loan to buy my first plane ticket to America. So again, I mean, to me, they went through a really tough life so that we never lacked for anything. They really built the foundations for me and my sister. And frankly, they are huge role models for me. And the two things, I mean, there are many values that they imparted in us, but two things that really come to mind. Their focus was first on education and continuous learning as a long-term asset and an advancement tool. And the second was thrift, in the sense that spend only on what is necessary, invest but do not waste. I mean, though that's basically the philosophy, and that's kind of my background.
Yeah. Absolutely very strong values, and they're probably reflected in you somewhere, as we all learn by osmosis from our role models, in this case, your parents. So Samir, you went to IIT Kanpur after your schooling. How was your experience there? I mean, you established some of your long-term friendships there as well, that lasted till now, even in some of your startups, right? So how was your experience there?
I mean, so I guess before I start about my experience, I want to recount what my experience was getting in. So I used to stand first in my class in school. I was good at academics. I did reasonably well at the IIT entrance exam. And frankly, I was beginning to feel pretty smug about my intelligence and abilities. But when I reached IIT, any conception of my intelligence or abilities was very, very quickly shattered. I mean, almost everybody stood first in their class at school. And I met and interacted with so many people who were I would say, an order of magnitude smarter and better than me in
Mm-hmm.
pretty much every sphere:
Mm-hmm.
academic, sports, extracurricular activities. And very honestly, in the first semester there, my ego came crashing to the ground. And that was an eye opener for me. But frankly, it was a great thing because it taught me a lot of humility. What I realized is, regardless of where you reach, there will always be better and smarter people than you. And that's just a realization that I have. So it's important to stay grounded, work with such smart and bright people, learn from them. And uh, to give you an idea, I've been fortunate to have completed my college degree with some of the smartest people I have known. So what I was saying is that, I mean, I've been fortunate to have completed my college degree from a college where I met some of the smartest people I have known. In my startups, I have done 3 startups with another IIT Kanpur graduate, Jay Rawat.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I mean, an amazing guy. And with Praveen Bhagwat, who is one of the most incredible guys I've worked with. So it's been really fortunate from that perspective. The other thing that happened at IIT Kanpur is I also formed a lot of lifelong relationships that
Mm-hmm.
endure to date. I mean, even today, we have reunions every year in locations in both India and the US.
Mm-hmm.
And these reunions are big. I mean, there are 120 people at these reunions.
Right.
But the interesting part is, if I meet a college mate, maybe 34 years after graduation,
Mm-hmm.
the conversation continues to flow freely and naturally as if we met just yesterday.
Yeah, you
And
pick it
that
right
is the
up.
true
Yeah.
strength of the bond. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and all valid points. I think when you go to an institution like that, there's a sort of leveling. You go from being a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond,
Yeah.
and that kind of calibrates your ego. And
Yep.
so yeah, I mean, and these are the foundational years, and then the diaspora goes all over the world and in different dimensions. So um,
Yeah,
very,
it's always interesting to see the paths and the angles that people have at life, and it's a lot of learning. I mean,
yeah.
we have I have classmates who are at the topmost layers in the bureaucracy in India,
Mhm.
doing well in finance, doing some very interesting or completely different careers, and
Yeah,
it's truly inspiring.
absolutely, absolutely. So, Samir, you started your career in high tech as an engineer. Uh, Tell us about that time period, and what was the impetus behind writing the books? And you obviously had patents, so you were in the thick of technology. And then, the transition to entrepreneurship. How did that time period look like, and that transition?
Sure, sure. So I got my first job out of University of Washington at Sun in 1992. Um, and at that time, frankly, after IIT, Sun was another place with extremely high density talent. That was the place to go to for a lot of graduates. So a lot to learn, great place to work, great environment. I mean, I've always cherished my time at Sun. But for me personally, it was a time of restlessness and eagerness.
Mhm.
I frankly, I have always loved America for its energy,
Mhm.
uh, and I wanted to achieve the American dream. I
Mhm.
was full of ideas, looking for opportunities to excel, and really pushing forward full throttle. And I still remember when you and I shared an office for nearly 9 months at Sun.
Yeah,
You and I had discussed various possibilities, so I
right.
still remember that.
Yeah.
Um, but at that time, I mean, I was into chip design, and when I was learning the Verilog language, I was not really satisfied with the books available. I was not happy with how my learning went.
Mhm.
So I said, I'll just write one from what I learned. And frankly, I was 28 years old, young, inexperienced. And I didn't really know whether I should be writing the book or I have enough credibility, but I said I'm going to do it anyways. And somehow the book hit the mark and became very popular. Now it's a textbook on chip design courses at many universities. So that was kind of my transition into book writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the note of entrepreneurship, I mean, frankly, Silicon Valley is a wonderful place to be to get inspired. I mean, you have so many great examples.
Right.
And I also wanted to do what nobody in my family had ever done before, to start my own company. So in 94, 95, that approximate time period, I had just gotten married. I used to write my book 3 hours a day in the morning. I had a full-time job at Sun. I was pursuing my executive MBA 2 to 3 hours in the evening. And I was writing down ideas in my notebook about what types of companies I could start. So frankly, I had no hours in the day left, but those were restless days, and it was fun and it was exciting.
Right.
So it was really interesting time, and it was tech. And in Silicon Valley, moving from tech to entrepreneurship, you have seen so many people do that.
Right.
So in November 95, I had about $20,000 in my bank. And I said, enough thinking, let's just make it happen.
Yeah.
So I quit Sun and started I2P.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first company building USB, PCI, and some of these building blocks for computer chips. And interestingly, our first project was actually NVIDIA. At that time, it was just a newly started startup. So very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And I still remember my manager asking, hey, what happens? I mean, you're quitting. Have you thought through the whole thing? I said, I haven't really thought through. And he asked, what if it doesn't work out?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, and again, young, cocky,
Mm-hmm.
confident at that time, maybe foolish, but I said, you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'm confident that you will hire me back. And I actually told him that.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, you could call it confidence or youthful exuberance,
Yeah.
but kind of the move worked. And since November 95, I have never worked for a company that I had not founded.
That's nice. Yeah. Yeah. You became your own boss in some ways.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's wonderful. So you did your first startup in the US, and then after that exit, decided to kind of relocate back to India. So what were the factors that played into that decision? What did you lose or gain by that transition, if anything?
So in fact, I mean, I did two startups in the US before I relocated to India. I did I2P,
Mm-hmm.
which was in the chip design area, and Obongo, which was in the single sign-on area. So
Mm-hmm.
nowadays you have this remember your password in Chrome.
Yeah.
We actually, Jay and I had the original patents on that technology. So,
Wow.
so we took both of them to exits. Uh, and after Obongo's exit, the year was about 2001. I was still figuring out what to do next. I mean, honestly, I have, I loved America at the time, still do, and there was no reason to go back. But something in my head was calling me home to India,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where I was born. That's where I felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bug in my head. And I had to get that bug out. So I kind of talked to Anu, and she graciously agreed with my decision, saying, I'm going to support you on that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, my friend and my classmate from IIT, Praveen Bhagwat, that's where that IIT connection came in.
Mm-hmm.
He was at IBM TJ Watson. Yes, he had finished his PhD from University of Maryland. He had actually written the first Bluetooth specification at IBM. So he was one of the authors.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just relocated to India, and he was an associate prof at IIT Kanpur.
Nice.
So he was saying that he was working on some upcoming technology called Wi-Fi to build a long distance network. At 2001, Wi-Fi was still
Yeah.
not known to most. And he's wanted to start a company in Wi-Fi security. He said, Wi-Fi is going to be big. So
Mm-hmm.
why don't we build a company which helps secure Wi-Fi?
Right.
And Praveen was one of the absolute smartest people I've known. And I trusted his ability so much
Mhm.
that I decided to join him as a co-founder in like November 2002
Mhm.
and moved back to India in 2003 May.
I see.
Uh, so it was one of the other let's make it happen moments after my first company.
Mhm.
uh, I knew I had to basically get that moving back to India bug out of my head. My kids were 6 and 4, so I said sooner the better, and I just did it. We literally packed 4 bags and just relocated.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of thing. um, one could, I mean, one could think about what I gained from that experience. The first thing was I got the bug out of my head,
Mhm.
because otherwise it's just bothersome.
Yeah.
The second is because I worked in my own companies, I kind of set the culture, the pace. So job satisfaction was never the issue. I
Mhm.
mean, one of the issues people have is if they're working in an environment that is set by somebody else, they are often not happy with it. So that was not an issue.
Right.
The third one was, since my companies catered to the US markets, we
Mhm.
had access to the same financial opportunities as a startup in Silicon Valley would have.
Right.
So financial considerations were not an issue, whether I'm losing out on that part. There were a few other personal things. My kids grew up in an Indian culture, which I really wanted.
Mhm.
Our parents live close by. I still continue to be close to the family. When I'm on the street, I can speak my mother tongue.
Mhm.
And life, frankly, is very comfortable. I mean, I feel at home. I cannot really complain about what I've gained.
Right.
Um, and frankly, I mean, one could analyze or imagine what I have lost, but frankly, we will never know.
Yeah.
So because I didn't take that path, so why worry about it? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Right. You take a decision and kind of stick with it, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and you went with your gut feel, so to speak, right? And that bug that you had in you, and it worked out. And you're satisfied with that decision. So that's
Yep.
great.
Absolutely.
Very few people have the gall to do what you did, and so really kudos to you for
Yeah.
doing that.
I mean, at that point, probably you look back in hindsight, you might almost call it foolish that who does that? But uh, I guess it worked out, so one can always enjoy
Hmm.
that a little, but it worked out.
Excellent. So now talking about your entrepreneurship journey, what are the factors that are instrumental in you being a serial entrepreneur? What keeps you going? I mean, people do one or two and, they have good exits, then they become complacent, or, they've seen it all, done it all. What keeps you going? And what advice would you have for young entrepreneurs at the cusp of starting or who are in the analysis paralysis stage?
So, I mean, rather than advice, what I can recount is what I have learned from starting these companies,
Hmm.
and maybe some learnings can come out of that.
Sure.
But the first thing I realized in starting my own company is that your destiny is yours to control. Win or lose, it is still yours. And that is a great feeling. It is not somebody
Hmm.
else's destiny that you're trying to fulfill. And that's a great feeling, right?
Right.
Uh, Luckily, in all my 5 companies, it led to successful exits. But even if they had failed, I would not have regretted it because it was all mine,
Hmm.
right? That helps. The second thing that happened was early on, I got a lot of financial freedom
Hmm.
through my early exits. And I never had to look for a job. So even if it took me 6 months, a year, 2 years to make it happen, it gave me the freedom to choose my own path. And the interesting part about companies is that you don't have to necessarily have a $1 billion exit.
Hmm.
Even if you're modestly successful, you will still end up with financial freedom very early in your life. And
Right.
that's a really satisfying feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the third thing that was personally very rewarding is working with some really smart co-founders.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, it elevated my level of thinking to where I could not have gone before. And
Mm-hmm.
that was very, very interesting. The final thing is that you do one, you do two, but doing five, the question is why.
Mm-hmm.
But really, building a company from scratch is like planting a seed that grows into a tree that bears fruit. So
Mm-hmm.
people who like gardening, they will understand that it's a very satisfying experience. A lot of people's lives get shaped by working in your companies. They advance their careers. It is a very, very satisfying feeling. And therefore, while you're young, rather than just retire, it is very satisfying to start something that a larger community will benefit from.
Right,
So
right.
that,
I'm
that
an
was
avid
definitely,
gardener, by the way, so I totally understand what you're saying. The
yeah, yeah,
satisfaction of planting the seed, watching the plant grow and bearing fruit, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
also, I think you talked about financial exits. While that is a good thing to sustain yourself, I believe a lot of entrepreneurs are not motivated by money only. So there is some higher or ulterior goal that they're driven by, right? And money can come as a byproduct in a successful exit. And this is just my take on it, but having spoken with so many people, that's uh, the factor that keeps them going, right? The satisfaction of starting something, impacting lives, and then building something that hasn't been built before. So
yeah.
just my,
So I'll give you simple examples,
yeah.
right? When you have an employee who started as a fresh graduate,
Mhm.
that employee comes to you saying, "I just bought a house," or "I got married." You see them grow in their professional lives,
Mhm.
and you feel that somewhere I had a part to play in this. Though that's a very satisfying experience, I still have people from companies 30 years ago.
Mhm.
They recognize me. Sometimes my memory has faded, so I can't really remember their names. But it's a very nice feeling to say that you made a difference to their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, my you asked about the advice for young
Mhm.
entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
The way I look at it is, I always tell people that the earlier you start your own company, the less risk you have, because frankly, you don't have any liabilities, you don't have anything to lose,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Worst case, you will fail, but you will not have a regret. Again, there is a bug in the head, you need to
Mhm.
get it out. And you
Right.
will always find a job if you're smart. But the earlier you start, the more shots you can take at the goal. So a few other things I learned is that typically, how do you get your next idea? It's by solving a problem that you faced in your current company, right?
Mhm.
That's the easiest way to think of what to work on. And your
Know
current
the gap,
company could be
right? Yeah.
exactly that way you're really thinking on the job.
Mhm.
And few people tend to just quit their jobs and start thinking what to do. That's not such a great idea,
Yeah.
because your current job can be a fertile ground for thoughts as long as you remain non-competitive and don't use their resources or
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
It's perfectly okay to do that. And the other thing that founders think, oh, is my business unique? And there is this whole VC thing saying, oh, it has to be very unique.
Mhm.
And frankly, I think it is perfectly okay if the business is not totally unique. There are thousands of ways to differentiate your business. Uh, it is not necessarily the product.
Yeah.
So, my general advice is don't try to eliminate all the unknowns. If the idea looks reasonable,
Yeah.
let's make it
Go
happen.
for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Go for it.
I mean, you could build a better mousetrap, right? I mean, as they say, as opposed to building a brand new contraption to replace a mousetrap. So
Yep.
I think that would be the gist of what you're saying in some ways. Great. Now let's change the tone of the talk a little bit. Uh, I mentioned about your, love for travel, wanderlust, and, uh, your whole life is a testimonial on all the treks and adventures you've done. So, how did you develop the love for travel? And, some of the treks you've done are really non-trivial. Can you talk about some of them and how do you kind of conceptualize and execute upon them?
So what happened was while we were living in the US, two things happened. My kids were little,
Hmm.
and we used to spend all our family vacations visiting India because we had to
Hmm.
meet parents and relatives and stuff like that. So I had no vacation left.
Hmm.
But when we moved back to India in 2003, I could actually spend my vacations elsewhere.
Right.
So that's the first time I could start using the vacations on places where we really wanted to travel outside of India. And from that point on, we started doing at least one major family vacation
Hmm.
every year.
Okay.
And luckily, all members of my family, my kids, they enjoy travel because we learn about new geography, landscapes, new cultures, religions, food, and
Hmm.
frankly, a very different way of living.
Of course.
So it puts life, your own life in perspective, that you live in this small microcosm and you're insulated from the rest of the world. And when you really see these different ways of living, it kind of puts it in perspective. You develop humility as to how small you are in the whole universe.
Right.
And that's kind of how we developed the travel tradition. And to date, we have visited over 80 countries. I mean, that's what we have ended up
Unbelievable.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing that happened is when my kids grew up and went to college, my first one went to college,
Hmm.
Anu and I said, why don't we do a trek? Somebody proposed the idea of Everest Base Camp back in 2016.
Hmm.
Um, and then that bug kind of infected us. We did Valley of Flowers, we did Annapurna Circuit. So anything below 17,000, 16,000 was not fun enough.
Hmm.
We did Chadar, which is, we were in minus 35 Celsius.
Wow.
We did a 20,000er Stoke Kangri in the Himalayas. Outside India, we did the John Muir Trail, which is about 230 miles.
Hmm.
We did Kilimanjaro, which is a 19,000er, and we recently did a 100-mile Tour du Mont Blanc in France.
Hmm.
So that's what we did.
Hmm.
And the way it typically gets executed is my co-conspirator in some of these things is Jay Rawat,
Hmm.
also my co-founder.
Hmm.
And he and I, he also loves this stuff. So he has been on most of the treks
Hmm.
together, except one or two.
Yeah.
And either he comes up with an idea, I come up with an idea, or and then something sticks in our head. We assemble a core group of like 9 or 10 people that we have.
Hmm.
Typically, there are enough trek agencies that will make arrangements to execute it. But it's really about training and being physically ready for the trek.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You cannot just wake up one morning and go for
Yeah,
it. You have to, I guess, plan it in detail and then execute it. So,
yeah, yeah. So
but it's very inspirational when I look at how you document everything and see the pictures and your love for travel just comes across, very,
yeah.
very beautifully, and it's very inspirational for sure.
Now, what happened? What I've realized is that if I do not document it, I tend to forget what I
Hmm.
did.
Yeah.
And it is very cool to just go back and relive some of those moments.
Hmm.
But also for other people who want to maybe plan something, it can be very helpful.
Right.
So I kind of do it for my own purposes,
Hmm.
where I can recount some of those experiences, but it's helpful for other people. So
Yeah. So the way maybe I can say this jokingly, the engineer in you hasn't fully left you. So you captured that love for travel in a well
yeah.
documented way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And frankly, what I've seen is in the mountains, I mean,
Uh-huh.
being in the mountains is a truly enjoyable experience. I've it's almost meditative in some sense when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And the grandeur and the majesty of those mountains, it kind of makes you feel small,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of makes you humble. It makes you connected. It's just a spiritual experience almost sometimes.
The power of Mother Nature, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So excellent. I mean, something to, you know, learn from and perhaps do some of those things for
Sure.
me personally. Although I have traveled quite a bit, but not to the extent you have. Samir, what are the top three values and strengths that have guided you throughout life and sustained you, irrespective of whether it was your career or going for a trek or just kind of going through life? What do you think
Sure.
are the three values and strengths?
So I would say there are a few, not but sometimes I just feel like a philosopher when I say this, but
I
I would
know.
say these are just some of my learnings.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, the first thing I've realized is that um, the best experiences in life, especially in nature, are actually free.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Treks, walks, just getting some sunshine outdoor. I mean, all these things come for free. And especially in the US, it's such a wonderful place for some of these things that more and more people should really take advantage of that. I mean, we worry far too much about accumulating wealth
Mm-hmm.
when most of the things are available at our doorstep for free.
Yep.
So that's one thing that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I realized, and when I see my college mates go through a lot of health issues, I've realized that more than anything else, your body is your most important asset
Mm-hmm.
of all the things that you own. I mean, you have to invest in it because, frankly, there is no point being extremely wealthy yet bedridden.
Mm-hmm.
There is absolutely no point.
Yeah.
Um, the third thing for me, I've realized that, and this has always been the case, that friends and family are very, very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I tend to go out of my way to nurture those relationships, which means that even if I have to kind of change my plans or spend a little extra to make sure that I meet these people,
Mm-hmm.
I go out of my way to do that because that these are the people who will truly sustain.
Mm-hmm.
All the professional relationships that we have, they will last as long as I'm working, but they will slowly fade away. But personally, this is going to sustain.
Right.
And you asked for three, but I'm going to give a fourth one,
Yeah.
which is a recent
Absolutely.
learning,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is I realized that, uh, especially after some successful exits, it is important to accumulate wealth,
Mm-hmm.
but I do not like to accumulate possessions. And there is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Possessions are like you have a bigger house, bigger car. Actually, they tend to drag you down and increase stress
Mm-hmm.
eventually. And wealth actually sets you free by giving you the freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the little difference. And I've been reading this thing where there is this concept of life in a backpack.
Mm-hmm.
Can you fit your entire life in a backpack? And it's frankly an extreme ideal that I'm very far away from. But it's an interesting place to go to where you're completely unburdened by some of these possessions.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of sets you free. So, again, as I said, some of my learnings, I don't know
Yeah.
if they're useful. So,
Yeah. I mean, simple living, high thinking kind of approach.
yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think are your strengths? The three strengths that you have guided you throughout life.
Sure. So, I would say, again, one thing is that I'm not very afraid to take the leap. I kind of, I I'm not, I don't make stupid moves, but I do make calculated moves. And as long as the probability is in my favor, I kind of just do it.
Mhm.
That's one. And the second strength I would say is that I like to take things on my chest. If there's no point burying your head in sand. If
Mhm.
something is going to hit you, then you learn, don't try to dodge it, just deal with it.
Mhm.
And in my last company, I mean, we were 1 month away from uh, bankruptcy, to a point where we did not have payroll to pay for the next month. From that point, we paid off our investors, paid off our debt, and exited. So sometimes, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't kill you, as long as that is the case, you're still going to fight another day.
Yep.
So that's what I like to do. And the third strength I would say that I enjoy and I'm very good with people.
Mhm.
So I listen to them, I empathize with them, I can try to have a conversation around what makes them tick. Uh,
Mhm.
those are the kinds of things which I enjoy, and that has really helped me in my companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, all three very, very relevant and very important strengths. And the reality is we all have to work with people, right? And
Yep.
people are unique and different. So that's great. So Samir, gravitating towards the end of our conversation
So,
here, um, what does a typical day look like for you, and what do you do to relax? I mean, I guess these treks and travels are meant for relaxation, but on a daily basis, I mean, do you meditate? I mean, uh, what do you do to relax? And what's a typical day?
So, I mean, a typical day, I mean, right now is about 10 to 12 hours of work with some meetings at night to deal with the US time zone.
Mhm.
And as I'm transitioning out of Zinrello, that's going to change. So I'm going to have a little more free time on my hands. So I still got to figure out. But my typical day always starts with about 1.5 to 2 hours of exercise. And I wake up like 5:30. I'm either doing some climbing on the hill behind, cycling, there is some strength training, there is some yoga. So different days, different things.
Mhm.
So that usually is my starting. And what I've realized is uh, people ask, don't you get tired? So that does it affect your work? It's actually converse, where if I don't exercise, that's when I feel tired during the day. If I exercise, I'm energetic throughout the day and no problem until I sleep in the night. So that's typically, and I do meditate on a daily basis. So it kind of um, keeps me calm when there are some issues regarding the company or something else in my head.
Yeah.
Um, for relaxation, I would say I like reading nonfiction a lot. I love topics such like history, geopolitics, biographies. I watch movies and TV shows in both English and Indian languages. Um, on the weekend, I typically have one major trek on a Saturday, like 2 to 3 hours. And on Sunday, I do a 50 to 100 kilometer bicycle ride. And then during the day, watch some TV or invite some friends over. That's kind of almost relaxing and rejuvenating. I mean, it's tiring, but somehow the energy levels stay up.
Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, you seem to have captured it all, and takes a lot of discipline and mental fortitude to kind of do it on a regular basis. So that's awesome. So, Samir, that kind of brings us to the end of our talk. Are there any other parting thoughts that you would like to leave my viewers with?
So, frankly, I mean, we have talked about a lot of things, and parting thoughts is I've been very fortunate to have enjoyed the path that I have chosen so far in my life.
Hmm.
And frankly, I do hope that whatever path I choose going forward, uh, two things that going to be very important to me, that I remain in good health and in the company of my friends. That's my parting thought.
Uh, Very good parting thought. Uh, Samir, I really enjoyed this conversation, and even I learned from you during our conversation. So I really appreciate you and acknowledge you for making time for me and my viewers, who I'm sure will be motivated by what you did. I wish you the best of luck for future endeavors. And it was good catching up with you. So please stay in touch. Take care, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Upesh. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.